All right, today we have something super exciting, right? Besides the cucumber slices, we have something super exciting, and that is that we are doing an interview with Dr. Nick Thompson, a holistic veterinarian from the UK. You want to tell everybody about Dr. Nick, or you want me to do it? So, Dr. Thompson has 20 years of experience. He's trained in homeopathy, acupuncture, natural nutrition, veterinary herbal medicine. He has a special interest in immunology, internal medicine in all species, and autism spectrum behavior in dogs and horses. Now, he offers online courses on raw bone feeding, the raw diet, how to set it up. He's located in Bath, Somerset, England. He offers one-on-one consultations by phone, Skype, telemedicine consultations. You should check out his supplement store. All of the links will be in the bio. Now, watch this entire interview because we deep dive into why most commercial dog foods are really bad, why the raw and the homemade approach is a much better way to keep dogs living longer, what to feed dogs with diabetes and other chronic disorders, as well as a ton of tips on keeping dogs not only living longer but also living better. So you ready? Ready for the interview? So if you could, there's some sometimes negative connotation that goes along with the word holistic in the Western world, even in Italy. I know in the US and when I lived in South America, the same thing. So could you explain to everybody what is the difference between a holistic vet and a more traditional?
That's a really interesting question because I think that more and more there is a positive connotation to holistic practice, because I think a lot of people are becoming disillusioned with simply taking a drug paradigm approach. For example, the conventional approach to medicine is you either give a drug or you do surgery, or in veterinary medicine, you would use one of the ultra processed, either dried or canned foods. Okay,
Right.
that's essentially that's your toolbox. But what happens with holistic medicine, Vincenzo, is that we have that toolbox. I'm a fully qualified veterinary surgeon, and as well as those three major tools, I will also look at homeopathy, acupuncture, nutrition, which is a big part to play, nutrition, and herbal medicine as well. And as well as that, we would look at bringing in other colleagues to offer chiropractic, osteopathy, hydrotherapy, and other ancillary additional tools to bring to bear with any given disease process. So it's a little bit like if your car wasn't working, would you go to the guy in the garage who had 3 tools or who had 10 tools?
Right, exactly.
You know, it's that's the kind of it's a very basic approach, but that's essentially how we look at it. But I think one of the most important things is that we look at the problem very broadly. It's not just you've got dermatitis and here's a drug which will, and I'd say you and the dog for me are essentially the same thing. So you bring the dog to the vet and you say, my dog is itchy, and they say, right, here's an anti-itch product. Yeah, that's kind of how it works, really. Whereas what we will be doing as a holistic vet, we'll be looking at diet, we'll be looking at supplements, we'll be making sure that there are no parasites, we will be looking at infection, we'll be looking at any sensitivities, and we're trying to bring the whole whole picture to life.
Right. That's a great way of putting it. There is a Italian research scientist named Walter Longo. He's into longevity, and in his book, he describes he was living in the U.S. and there was an accident near his house, and he was amazed that there was an EMT, there was a fire engine, the police, the paramedics came. But when he was doing his internship at a hospital, there were people who would come in and get diagnosed with cancer, and they were basically told, okay, here's your appointment with the oncologist, and that's it. And he was shocked that there wasn't a team and I think of holistic medicine a little bit like that. Why is the person only getting the oncologist? Where's the nutritionist? Where's the acupuncturist? Where is the person who's going to look at even mental health and all the different things of stress? And
Mm.
to me, it's like there's another vet who's called the dog cancer doctor, and he terms it full spectrum approach. I think that's a
Mm.
great way to put it, because you're not just looking, as you said, at one thing. There's a team of colleagues. There's an array of medicines that you can use. To me, and this is the next question, I feel like this would be the ideal approach for the pet parents who have older dogs, because I think a lot of people who are disillusioned, and I know I've been raising seniors for 20 plus years now, and I know that a lot of times when you go to traditional vets, they don't get quite the attention that a puppy gets, or a dog who's going to be there for long term and equal long term profits, especially if you have a sick older dog, if they have cancer or something. So, in your opinion, is the holistic way the better way for senior dogs?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, that's why, I I deal with the life of the dog, preconception, conception, pregnancy, puppy, junior,
Mm,
adult, senior, extra senior,
mm,
end of life, and then dealing with the whole family, after death as well. So really, it's a even beyond cradle to grave service
right,
that I offer, and I think homeopathy and within holistic medicine it is without a doubt. It's a little bit like, if you think in the old days, there would be the for humans, this is there would be the town doctor, the village
mm,
doctor, and he would know absolutely everybody. And if he was of any significant age, he would have delivered the mothers that are coming to him with their
right,
kids, and he would know the parents, and he would live and eat and work in that town, and he would eat what the people ate, and what was good he would know, what was bad he would know. If there was a delivery of tomatoes or grain or meat that was bad, and he saw disease as a process coming through because of that, he would be holistically engaged with the whole village, and
right,
he would be able to advise. Whereas a more conventional approach would be the guy who comes in from the city to the town. He doesn't really know anybody there. He keeps on getting people coming in who are sick, and he gives them a drug when in fact it's been a bad delivery of meat, or
mm,
the butcher
right,
has got an infection and everybody's getting a similar infection, something like this.
right,
It's a much broader, it's a much more old-fashioned
right,
approach, Vincenzo, which I think
mm,
is, it's done us for several hundreds of thousands of years until the advent of drug medicine. Nothing wrong with drugs. They have their place. I'm not saying they are not. But just because you have a very powerful tool doesn't mean that's the only tool you should carry around for the rest of your life.
right, right, right. Absolutely.
It's an easy sell. I think we're in the post pharmaceutical world. We live in a post-pharmaceutical world. Yeah, pharmaceuticals came in a really big way, maybe 30s, 40s, 50s, and then they became big, big, big up till the 70s and the 80s, and then this kind of 70s and 80s, people started thinking about nutrition and about supplements and things like this, but it was just the fads. It was the hippies. It was the people at the outside of society. But I think that people increasingly are questioning medicine,
Mm,
questioning their vets, questioning their doctors. And I think that's a healthy place to be. Now we have the internet, and that's,
right,
on one hand it's a good thing, on one hand it's a bad thing, but at least people can become informed, and they're better able to have conversations. One of the things that I say to my clients is that good medicine is 90% communication. And I see my job as a holistic practitioner to teach. Yeah, I've been in veterinary medicine for 37 years now, and I think I've got a lot to teach people about skin, about joints, about what makes a dog tick, about lungs, about the whole system. And so I think uh, that's what makes medicine much more worthwhile for me. There's a statistic in the UK whereby 30% of people who start in veterinary medicine, they leave within 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, because they're disillusioned. Yeah, it's become very corporatized, and it's
Right.
very kind of protocol driven. If you see a dog with diarrhea, you do this, this, and this. If you see an itchy
Right.
dog, you do that, that, and that.
Right.
Whereas from my point of view, my first consultation is up to an hour. I talk to people. I say, tell me what's wrong with your dog. Tell me if your dog went to the doctor, what would they complain of?
Right.
What is concerning you? You know? So there are it's old fashioned medicine, but with all the new technology for drugs, the new technology for surgery, the new technology for oncology, if we have to go down that line. But we're not leaving behind the incredible tradition of thousands of years of human experience.
That's amazing. And something you touched on there, and I know that you're a big advocate of the raw food diet.
I am.
Why in 2024 are so many veterinarians still recommending commercial dog foods? When, I mean, like you said, with the internet, a lot of pet parents now know how bad they can be. But I will say on our channel, the only time we ever get resistance is from people who say, absolutely, you are wrong for home cooking, you're wrong for home raw food. My vet says science diet's the best. Our veterinary clinics here in Italy are full of Royal Canin. I have a unique perspective, perhaps, because I lived in Europe, in the US, and in South America. And in all three places, the veterinary clinics all have, the vets have their textbooks on display, and all of them are sponsored by either Royal Canin or
Yeah.
Purina, all the big ones. So is it the education that they're still doing? Is it lack of learning more? Or is it, as you said, this is our toolbox, that's it?
I think there's some great observations there, Vincenzo. Do you notice that when you went to South America and you go along a jungle road for 20, 30, 40, 50 kilometers and you go to a tiny little village in the middle of nowhere, if you go to the little shop there will always be a Coca-Cola sign
Right.
and a
Right.
fridge with
Yes.
Coca-Cola. Okay. So I think we've got a corporate interest is number one. Yeah. If Coca-Cola can get and Nestle are the same. Nestle are Purina. Yeah. They're
Right.
one and the same thing.
Right.
Um Royal Canin are the parent company is Mars, who make Mars bars. So you've got to think, do they really care about the health of people eating their products?
Right.
Purina, Nestle, they make Kit Kats and a million other different
Right.
ultra processed products for humans, and they make Purina. Are they really
Right.
concerned? There's a wonderful book, Vincenzo. I would very much advise you to consider. It's called Ultra Processed People. It's about people, as the name suggests, but
Right.
it applies to you and me and the dogs. And Ultra Processed People is by a guy called Chris Van Tulleken. You'll be able to put it in the notes if you think that's a great idea. So I'm getting off topic. Um, you were saying, why are vets still promoting um, kibble and canned ultra processed food when there are papers upon papers upon papers saying ultra processed food is very bad for health in humans? And I think everybody recognizes that. Whether they actually action that for themselves or not is another thing. But I think they realize that going to McDonald's and KFC and Coca-Cola every day is not a great idea. But I think that these companies are still leveraging within the veterinary space, and I think vets, number one, at vet college, they're not taught about the pros and cons of kibble, the pros and cons of raw. And I think that would be very reasonable. I'm very pro raw, but I think that we have to recognize that any intervention, penicillin, prednisolone, kibble diet, there has to be upsides, there has to be downsides. With everything in life, there's the light and the shadow always. And therefore, I think that vets, because they're not taught it at vet college, and they're very heavily marketed to by the Hills, the Purina, the Royal Canons of this world, because they're a captive audience. And if you can convince them, you've got a customer for life. You've got somebody who will promote your products for life. So they're not taught it at college. Then they come out of college and they're too busy. Or this is the narrative. I'm too busy to look into nutrition, and to do it properly, it takes a bit of work. But so they're too busy to look into the pros and cons of kibble, the pros and cons of raw, and so they stick with the paradigm that they've been taught. There are whispers in the press and in some scientific publications which continue to sow distrust in the raw food paradigm for young, middle, and old age dogs, and that's a real shame. And I think the true conversation should be pros and cons of both. I think that's not an unreasonable conversation to have. That's not being had. And if you think about it, there are many studies now, several dozen studies demonstrating where raw food is actually better than dry kibbled food. Yeah, these are little biscuits that people know about. There is not one that demonstrate that kibble is healthier than raw, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. And if you think of it, raw is a tiny little minnow like this, and Nestle, Mars, Colgate Palmolive, who make Hills, they're making billions of dollars, $5, $6, $7 billion annually globally, and they haven't produced one paper to say that kibble is healthier than raw, which kind of suggests that kibble is not healthier than raw.
Absolutely. We do a raw and cooked mix with our dogs, and I'm totally fine with raw if you trust where your meat is coming from.
Yep.
And home cooking is fine too. It's just amazing because I did have a conversation with a veterinarian, and she was asking me what I fed one of my dogs, and I told her, and she said, "Why do you do that?" She wasn't being antagonistic. I said, "Have you ever looked at the back of the bags that you sell out there?" She said, "No." And she came back in about a half hour later, and she said, "I can't believe what I just read." She had no idea that, because I believe it was Royal Canin, but it was Royal Canin for, I think, dogs with kidney problems. So it was even more of an insult as far as the ingredients went. So
yeah,
I knew then that it wasn't, it was a bit of dogma and a bit of education. So it wasn't that everybody feels that this home cooking doesn't have the vitamins, or that. You also hear the term complete. It's not a complete diet. They're not going to get all the nutrients. My dogs are lacking nothing. They've been eating this way for 20 years.
There you go. Yeah, and if you're doing it wrong, something would have happened somewhere along the line. There's a couple of things there. Number one is vets, as well as the other things I was saying, they're not trained, and then they're too busy. And a lot of vets think that veterinary medicine is above nutrition. Yeah, we do medicine, we do surgery. Right. We'll just let the companies do the food, okay? And that's nobody said that to me, but there's a subtext of that. And the other thing is, I think they're scared of it. because of all this drip 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 of the big corporates are saying a drip drip drip. Oh, you don't want to be doing that. Okay, they may not put it on their websites, but the reps will come along and go, oh, raw. Have you seen the latest raw? And you know how dangerous it is. Have a bag of this. Yeah. So I think that's a really important aspect of this. Vets want the best for their animals. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I met a vet. In fact, I can't think ever met a vet who actually wanted harm to their pets. Obviously, it's counterintuitive to have that, but if all you know is ultra processed food, then you're going to do your best with ultra processed food. If all your knives are blunt, you do your best with blunt knives. Yeah. Whereas if you want to cook, if you want to prepare meat, you know, to extend the metaphor, if you want to be effective in the kitchen, then sharp knives are a good idea. Chop your veggies, chop your meat, and etc. etc. Yeah. So, and I just think ultra processed food, it is food of sorts. Well, it's actually it's a product derived from food. In the Nova classification, that's how they describe it. A product derived from food. Whereas I think there's no such thing as dog food. There's no such thing as senior food. There's food.
Right.
Period.
Yeah, we actually did a video like that last month where I said, should dogs eat people food? And I said no, because chicken and beef and vegetables and fruits are not people food, they're food.
Totally.
People food are things that come in a can, in a bag, that can last on your shelf for 3 weeks without spoiling. Everything processed, chips and candy, you know, like you said, Mars bars. Those are people foods. We don't have the right to call it, because almost every mammal eats these foods. You know, we eat meat, we eat fruits or vegetables or grasses or whatever, but dogs should be eating these foods. And you know, you're talking about the processed food. I've been into nutrition and a nutritionist and playing sport for many years, and I can tell you that for me, I've only really seen in the longevity for people, humans, the eye on processed foods has really only begun in the last, I'd say, 15 years, where it's starting to become mainstream. And people are starting to understand, which is the next topic I want to get to, which is gut health. This has exploded in recent years, but I still don't see a lot of it for dogs. And to me, if you heal the gut, you heal the dog. And I think it has so many far-reaching, as far as longevity goes and as far as health span. Your dog's gut health is paramount, because it affects joints, it can lead to other chronic diseases and inflammation response. So what do you do for gut health? How do you counsel your clients on that? Are people resistant to it? And have you seen more people becoming aware of it in the last, say, decade or so?
Yeah, totally. Gut health. We're learning more and more, as you say, that if your gut, the balance of bacteria and protozoa, archaea, microfilaria, viruses, all these guys just mingle around within your gut. They call it the second brain. There's a thing that we have, the gut-brain axis. So that it means that if your brain is upset, it can influence your gut and your microbiome. If your microbiome is upset, it can influence the gut and then up to the brain via the vagus and other important pathways. And we are learning that this is a massively important part of health. And here's the thought experiment: is we've got our dogs, okay, and they are to all intents and purposes very similar to how they've been for millions and millions, up to maybe 45 million years. They've been pretty, persistent on the planet. We've been around as Homo sapiens maybe 3 million years or so, depending who you talk to. They've been around 45 million years, okay? And they've been scavenging. They will eat They will eat carcasses that the saber-toothed tiger has taken down. They will eat fresh prey. They'll eat frogs and lizards and mice and rabbits and antelopes and sheep and they will eat herbivore feces. Okay, they will do that, and it's part of this recycling. I always say to my clients, dogs are the recyclers, the cleaning brigade within the forest. They just clean up any mess that anybody else leaves. Cats, on the other hand, they're much more picky. They need live, fresh prey. Whereas dogs, if I can eat it, I'll eat it. That's how they do it. So that's how the microbiome has become attuned to that kind of eating. Also, they'll eat kind of feast or famine. You know, in the spring, there's lots of rabbits around. They'll eat loads of rabbits all the time. In the winter, they're going to go starving quite a lot. And so they have a feast or famine, whereas cats need a continual supply of fresh meat. So that is the microbiome, okay? And we're only just learning about the intricacy and the diversity and the complexity of the biome and its relationship to the gut and to immunity and all the inflammation and all these things. But if you have this gut, okay, and then if you imagine Ralston Purina, 1956, comes along with this process by which they can make kibbled food. First of all, they're making it for humans, and then they think, if we just add a little bit of horrible meat and bone meal to it, we can now sell this light, attractive, non-smelly in the summer food stuff. And it went gangbusters. It just took America by storm, and whatever takes America usually takes the rest of the world, as Coca-Cola have demonstrated to us. And so you've got 45 million years of scavenging, and then you've got 56, 66, 76, 86, 96, 2006, 16, and we're almost 26. So that's 70 years. So you've got 45 million years scavenging. 70 years of extreme exposure to ultra processed food. And during that time, we are seeing, if you're looking at me, we're seeing obesity go like this in our dogs, in our seniors, all dogs, even puppies. We're seeing diabetes go like this. We're seeing autoimmune disease go like this, and it matches the humans since the late 70s, and equally, what happened in the States in the 70s is that they changed the low fat, high fat. They said you've got to eat low fat food essentially, and so there was an massive increase in human ultra processed food. They swapped out fat, they put in loads of carbs, and the obesity rate increased massively. What's happened over the last 30 years or so in the dog population? Well, there was a 2017 paper by Alex German. He's the kind of king of obesity in the UK. And he said that 74% of dogs in the UK were either overweight or obese. Right. Okay, and that was 17. So we're now 7 years down the line. I think it's more like 80%. And if you walk down the high street, I think you probably agree with me. Yeah. And obesity is now classed as a disease. It's not just, oh, look at him, he's a bit roly-poly. Look at her, she's a bit roly-poly. I'm talking about dogs here, yeah? But we see it in the human population, and it's causing diabetes and Alzheimer's and cancer and heart disease and what have you. And it is considered, obesity and overweight is considered a disease in our dogs. And it is a preventable disease. Which is such a shame. It's associated with renal disease, it's associated with liver disease, heart disease, joint disease, all these things we see in our oldies. So it is a preventable disease, and I think raw food is a very good way to help the dog regulate their diet without either eating ultra processed food or eating so little food that you don't really want to get old, because you think, I'm starving every day, I'm starving, I'm starving. What's the point in living? Okay, so I think we can give our young, medium, and old dogs really great food all their lives. We can give them bones to help with chewing all their lives, and we can improve their health span. Yes. So for me, it's not about lifespan. It's about health span. How long during that period can you be healthy, happy, resilient, immune, strong? So it's all of those features for me, because what we do it less in veterinary medicine, but we're kind of getting there in human medicine. When you get old, they'll just put you in a home or in hospital, and they'll just connect you up to a drip or medicine, or they'll just let you wither away, and that's not quality of life. And I think that's where veterinary medicine is potentially better than human medicine, is that doctors have a very strange relationship with death, whereas I think vets are much better at saying, we'll do everything. There's not a lot more we can do. I think that Charlie or Fido or Fifi, I don't think we can help anymore. Therefore, we have to really make some big decisions. And I think that that's a wonderful part of veterinary medicine. It's a very difficult part of veterinary medicine, but I think it's an important and wonderful part of veterinary medicine.
So that's actually very touching, because it is you can always tell. I mean, I've had a million dogs over the years, so you can always tell when your veterinarian is truly invested in their health. But in one of your videos on your website, I saw one of your frustrations in your early training, I guess when you first became a veterinarian, was in the traditional path, you felt that the diseases were only to be managed rather than be quote unquote cured, or at least improved. And I think you were talking about diabetes before. That's one that really jumps out to me, because the food that gets prescribed, or most of the diets you'll find, are not really about getting to the root of the problem. They're just about slowing glucose, the flow into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
What do you do for you have a patient come to you, the dog is diabetic. You recommend raw? Do you recommend low carb? Do you recommend ketogenic? Do you work with? I mean, I know some must be on insulin, but it's one of those things that and chronic kidney disease really hit me crazy, because most of the things out there are not about improving their lives. It's just about, let's just manage the symptoms with medicine. So what is your approach in these cases?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the video that you've seen is that I went into veterinary medicine after 6 years at vet college, and I thought, this is great. I know everything. Yeah, I was young then, Vincenzo, and I thought, this is great. I'm a vet. I can make animals better. But there were so many animals that you didn't make better. You just kind of kept on seeing them. And I was really disappointed in that. My mother was a nurse, my father was a doctor, and so I had some background in medicine, and they were very holistically minded, and therefore I knew that there was a much broader way to approach disease. And also, I very much know that if you have a disease process and you just treat the disease and you don't look at causal factors, you're likely not to cure that disease. In veterinary medicine, at vet college, they say they will tell you 80% of every dog who walks through the door will get better on their own. Okay, so we're not talking about those guys. Okay, they just need a little bit of help. And if it were me, it would be some herbs, homeopathic, probiotic, maybe just some education, Mrs. Jones, Bruno's going to be fine. Yeah, just give it some time. Maybe just feed some light food for a few days. Let me know in a week. Okay, maybe that's all it is. Okay, and I think vets are scared to not give anything. Yeah, usually you go to the vet and you come out with at least two prescriptions. Yeah, and a bag of food. Yeah, that's very 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 typical. Okay, and that's a real shame because sometimes all you need to say things are going to be fine. Yeah, this is what's happening. Let me explain. This is how the
Right.
kidneys work. This is what we need to do. We're just going to do da da da, and we're going to see, and then we'll do some tests in a couple of weeks. Okay, so sometimes that's all it is. And so coming back to your question was, yes, I was frustrated that there were so many diseases that we were just managing. And diabetes, for example, I think it's impossible to treat diabetes if you're feeding high carbohydrate kibbled food, which is basically everything on the market. Everything on the market is between 30 and 60% carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are insulinogenic, which then promotes diabetes. The difference between dogs and cats: dogs get type 1 diabetes, which is in humans is usually young age disease, where your pancreas just stops making insulin.
Right.
Okay, that's what dogs get. Cats, they do what humans do, and they get type 2 diabetes. Insulin resistance is this older age diabetes, and it's often due to overweight, too much insulin. And if you can lose weight, then you can, just by doing that, you can normalize, especially if you go onto a raw food, low carbohydrate diet. So with dogs with diabetes, type 1 type diabetes, a raw food diet is really important. And I've recently had a case, and this was an older, she was a black Labrador bitch, and she was on 4 units of insulin, and yet her insulin levels were between 20 and 30 still, even on 4. She couldn't take any more than that, and so that was it. And so what we were able to do using the a raw food diet and some herbs and some homeopathics was we were able to get her normal level of no, I'll give you the insulin. We were able to get her insulin down from 4 units down to 1. We haven't been able to get her off, but that's a fantastic improvement, because insulin is it's a growth hormone. It has many other side effects within the body. So the less you take, the better that is. And her average blood glucose came down to between 10 and 20. So still not right, but half of what it was on a quarter of the insulin dose. And the mainstay of the treatment was by changing her diet. And there was some herbs which we worked out for her specifically.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's I'm happy to hear it, because I don't think most people know how much diet can impact what's going on inside their dogs. And you talked about carbohydrates and how most foods, I mean, I've reviewed a lot of kibbles, a lot of commercial foods. I think I've seen 3 that have a low carbohydrate count, and one of them is a ketogenic diet dog food. They're few and far between, and even those end up getting bought by one of the big companies, and what was a low carb dog food starts to have peas and lentils and corn starches and things. So
yeah,
they get prescribed these foods that are full of carbohydrates, and they don't understand why the problem's not getting better. Like you said, you're going up in insulin units, and eventually you reach that point where there's nothing else to be done. And then, I mean, I think a lot of dogs unfortunately have been put down when they could have been helped over the last probably 70, 80 years. And it's getting better now, as you said, but it really makes me sad to think about just how many times that happens.
I agree. It's really sad, but the time to start treating an old age dog is you treat mum before conception.
Right.
Really? Yeah, that's the time to start. But sometimes you don't have that that wonderful opportunity, and
Right.
therefore, maybe if you're rescuing, you get an 8-year-old dog who's been in a rescue for several months, and they've been eating really terrible food, and they may have been eating really bad food over their lifetime. They've been over vaccinated. They've had pesticides, were too many pesticides, unnecessary pesticides, which are toxic. They've had too many wormers, which again are toxic, which affect the microbiome. They've maybe had antibiotics when they may not need those. The owner was wanting it just in case, or the vet was just playing a defensive medicine game, which sometimes happens, um, and therefore you're presented, and I'm sure you've seen this many times over the years, Vincenzo, is that you're presented with a dog, and they're 8 years old. Yeah, it's kind of medium-sized dog, and they are really struggling.
Right.
And so for me, the foundation would be diet, because that's going to help with the microbiome, and the microbiome can help behavior, the brain, anxiety, calmness. It can help immunity, therefore can help with long-term IBD, gut issues, long-term infection issues. Can help with improving circulation, because they're going to be more hydrated, because they're actually eating real food, not dehydrated, dried food. Their blood triglycerides are going to be reduced, because there are many papers in the dog literature, but also in the human literature, going back to the 60s, even in human literature, saying that if you eat a high carbohydrate diet, even in a low fat environment, your blood triglycerides, your blood fats, are higher than somebody who eats a regular diet with regular level of fat. And this is exactly what we see with our dogs. There's a researcher called Dr. Mark Roberts. He came out with a paper in 2017, and he said that he took 20 or so kibble dogs and 20 raw dogs. The kibble dogs were on a low-fat diet, because most kibbles have a moderated fat level, and that's another story. But he compared those with a regular raw food diet, which has much higher fat content, really healthy saturated fat content. And he looked at their blood triglycerides, and he lined up the test tubes. I've seen the photograph, and the blood fats from the kibble were much higher than the blood fats from the regular fat intake from the raw-fed dogs. And the reason for that is that the kibble contains carbs. Carbs bump up your insulin. Insulin is responsible for increasing your blood triglycerides, your blood fats.
I can tell you that we've had plenty over the years. I've adopted 10, 12, 13-year-old dogs, some of them in really bad shape. A few months of changing their diet and getting them to walk. And sometimes they can't walk in the beginning because they're too fat or they're too old.
Yeah.
The diet and the gut health change, I mean, the change is tremendous. And I know in those cases, like you said, in those cases, we can't do much to improve their lifespan. We may not necessarily be able to get them extra years, but their health span.
That's where it's at, Vincenzo. Yeah.
They, like you said, they enjoy living, and most of them really don't have a bad day until it's the very end, the day or two before they go. And that, to me, is the biggest win you can get.
Yeah.
And one thing you touched on there was the dry food.
Yeah.
And that it lacks the moisture of real food, of meat, of vegetables. How much does that affect? So if a dog comes to you and they have the beginnings of chronic kidney problems, or they're in full-blown chronic kidney disorder, wouldn't that be much more damaging to continue to feed them a dry food when obviously they are in such need? That's why they're drinking so much water to rehydrate. And seniors in general have a tendency to be dehydrated unless you take action to hydrate them. So
Yeah.
in those cases, do you feel that kibble is a very bad choice for a dog with kidney disorder?
Categorically. If you're in a bad way, Vincenzo, yeah, you walk out the door right now and you get hit by a car, what's the first thing they're going to do in the ambulance? They're going to put you on a drip, because maintaining hydration, maintaining blood pressure is central to organ function, to brain function, to getting oxygen to the tissues. It's really, really important. And that's maybe an extreme. Yeah, you've bled 2 liters onto the road and therefore they put you on a drip. But if you think about it, the dry fed dog, and as you've said rightly, is that they may need encouraging to drink. And if you're giving them a dry food diet, they're maybe not going to be taking on quite as much water as they actually need. So they may be running at a subclinical dehydration that you can't even see. Yeah, you might be able to find it on a blood test, but that means that you're 1% dehydrated for potentially months and months and months, years and years and years. Now, you and I can get slightly dehydrated. We go for a walk in the country and we forget to take any water. By the time we get back, we'll be very slightly dehydrated. That's okay. You top up, you equilibrate, and you're good to go. These guys are permanently slightly dehydrated. It means that your blood circulation, it's slightly more coagulating. It means that the oxygen carrying capacity, which is the stuff of life for heart, for kidneys, for liver, for spleen, for skin, for brain, is it's not flowing. Good life is about flow, as we know. We have reduced lymphatics. The lymphatics, the immune system uses the lymphatics as like secret passageways behind the scenes to direct B cells and T cells, and so that can affect immune system. So that's a very long way of saying that I think that hydration is really, really important, and it's difficult to make older dogs drink water, and therefore if the food is innately moist, just like they've been eating for 45 million years, I think that's massively helpful. But also we use quite a lot of bone broth, which is really wonderful. Yeah, it's the kind of thing your grandmother would have used for soups and keeping everybody healthy and happy, and very, very good for joints as well. But it's a nice trick to use for oldies, especially because of the chondroitin, the glucosamine, the hyaluronic acid, all those elements that help with joints, but also, as you said, because of the hydration. It's a cracking way. Yeah, everybody with an older dog should have good bone broth if you can make it yourself. It's so fun to make, and dogs absolutely love it. And if you see how much the dogs love it, you might want to try it. You can what we do at home is we have bone broth. It's the dog's bone broth, essentially. It is literally the same thing. We don't put any onions in it. So it's a very plain bone broth, and we get some miso. You know, the Chinese, Japanese miso. You put a little bit of that, a little bit of soy sauce. We don't do this for the dogs. I do it for me because it kind of adds to the flavor. And you add it to bone broth, and it's just delicious. At lunchtime, I often have bone broth. The dogs will have some bone broth. I'll have some bone broth with them. So it's great for joints, great for...
Yeah, that's excellent. We are rather militant about promoting bone broth
Good man.
Dogs get it twice a day, even the younger dogs. There's no downside. It's super cheap. I mean, you literally could make it for free almost. Most butchers will give you the bones. The only real problem is their nails grow back so fast, and they hate getting their nails trimmed. But all that collagen and glucosamine, it's just and it has such an impact on gut health as well.
Totally. I'm with you there. The glutamine is very, very good for the enterocyte health. Just thinking about, and I'm telling you how to suck eggs, but I'm just sharing ideas. With there's a couple of things. Somebody told me many years ago is with dogs who don't like getting their nails clipped, you can use a file. Chiropodists. The foot doctors. They will use like a diamond studded. They're very cheap because the diamonds are microscopic. Yeah, you get a diamond file, a chiropodist file, and you can just go chicka jig once a week, twice a week, and that's it. So you don't need to do the crunchy thing. So that's just a thought. The other thing is, I saw on Instagram recently, somebody had designed. I'm just trying to remember what it is. So it was a Frenchie or a Staffy, okay, with big long claws, and there was a board in front of the dog, and somehow there was a door, and the board was covered in like sandpaper. Yeah, really tough sandpaper, and there was a door which was sandpapered as well, and somehow the dog had to scratch at the board in order to open the door, and then they got a treat. And then they closed it again, and you do the next, and you do the other, you do the other foot. How you do the backs, I don't know, but the fronts grow a whole lot more than the backs. So I just thought that's genius. So if you're handy, or if you can get hold of it, it might be a way of making life a lot easier for everybody. Because I think stress, it's really important with older dogs, older people, just to keep the stress down. Yeah, it's about enjoying community, eating well, gentle exercise frequently, but most of all being happy. So you don't want stressful events, because that will not do you any good.
Right, exactly. Let's see, we got a couple minutes left. If just one more question, and this is about obviously I know you recommend bones, and you have a course on how to feed raw bones.
I do.
Are they okay for seniors? I've been feeding raw bones for forever. I've really only had one problem, and I call it the 1,000 euro bone, because a piece got lodged and I had to take one of my beagles in for surgery. I think it's because he snatched a piece from somebody else and swallowed it, because it was a fairly, maybe 4 or 5 centimeters. I don't know how he swallowed it, but in general, is there a safety concern? There are a lot of benefits to it, so if you could just walk us through that.
Yeah, in the video is called Bones and How to Feed Them, and really, feeding bones is like riding a bicycle. If you just get on a bike and go down a hill, you're going to end up with problems. If, however, you just take your time and you learn how to ride the bike in the park, maybe with stabilizers to start with, and you get a feel for it, give it a few years, you could be at the Tour de France. Yeah. But you don't want to start in the peloton at the Tour de France on your first day of riding bike. That's the most important thing, really. And so I talk about you've got dogs, even if they're 13 years old, they've just come to you, they've been eating Hills or Royal Canin all their lives. They don't want to start with big marrow bones straight away. They do want to start with marrow bone. No, they do want to start with bone broth. Okay, but they don't want to start with big tough bones. So what we do is we take them back to bone kindergarten, and we would start those guys with really soft, not small, because if they're small they can just swallow them, because this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, so they will try and swallow them. So big old chicken, turkey carcasses, things like that, really soft things. You'll then move up to, from kindergarten, you go to primary school. I'm not sure what it's like in Italy, but I'm sure it's pretty similar. Kindergarten, then you go primary school. Primary school would be duck necks, chicken wings, a soft-ish end of things. They're fairly easy to swallow, and they're really easy to do. So that would be primary school. Then you go secondary school. Secondary school would be ribs, a bit of brisket, something like that, and then only when you've done, you know, a month or two at kindergarten, a month or two at primary school, a month or two at the next level. And for me, I wouldn't go here until the dog has really stopped getting too excited about bones. They really know what they're doing. They know how to address different bones. It's only then that I would be looking for at the more brittle leg bones.
Okay.
Okay. So everything good in life requires a certain amount of dedicated study, and I think bones are exactly the same. People say to me, "Are they dangerous?" Yeah, but getting in your car is dangerous. But does that mean you're going to sell your car and never go in a car again? It's of that order. Yeah, the risk from bones is vanishingly small, especially if they've done their training, and the benefits are enormous, astronomical, and therefore there is no comparison. Yeah, air travel, aeroplanes fall out of the sky every year, and yet everybody continues to fly in aeroplanes.
Right.
It's about like that for me. Yeah, the upsides are enormous, and the downsides, especially if you're careful, great. Yeah.
I think we are just about out of time, but I wanted to thank you for this because it's been extremely informative. And I think anytime we can help senior dogs out, especially with someone with your pedigree, so to speak, it's a fantastic thing to do. So we just want to thank you for your time and for answering all of our questions.
Vincenzo, thank you, and kudos to you for looking after all those senior dogs. It's fantastic that they have such a caring champion as you. Good for you.
Thank you.